Hello and welcome to Breaking the Cycle. My name is Alan Hyde, and I will be your guide into the world of mental health, recovery, and spirituality. I'm joined tonight by our talented producer, Gabe. Gabe, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you.
Same to you, man. Same to you.
Yeah. If you guys tuned in last week, we had a pretty good and productive conversation last week, huh, Gabe?
We did. It was a heavy one, but it was a good one.
Yeah, I got some feedback on it during the week, and a lot of people were just glad to see two dudes from different backgrounds having a meaningful conversation.
For sure, absolutely. I mean, I don't think I've ever had a conversation like that with somebody else that didn't have a similar experience to me. So it's cool to do that.
Yeah,
especially doing it live. So
absolutely,
it was fun.
Tonight, I don't know how heavy it'll be, but I think tonight we're going to talk a little bit about perfectionism and get some different perspectives on it. And is that something you've experienced ever or seen?
Yes, it's definitely something that I've experienced in operating from time to time. I feel like I'm naturally an overthinker, and so there's a lot of things that like I want to accomplish and I want to do, but I think my way out of it. It's like, okay, I don't have all of my ducks in a row right now.
Yeah.
And I think that just comes from a place of wanting things to look right and wanting it to be right. I want it to like feel how it's supposed to feel. But even when you get to a certain level, it may not feel how you thought it was going to feel.
Right.
So I'm working my way out of that perfectionist mindset. So
yeah, it's important too that you mention, just if we're going to talk about kind of like the mental health side of it, like when it gets really severe, you mentioned overthinking. Right. And if you were to look up or Google or look in Webster's or look in the diagnostic criteria for perfectionism, it's a set of traits that are related to like obsessive compulsive type thoughts and behaviors, but it's characterized by high expectations and unrealistic standards. Right. And I think as you were kind of just touching on sometimes the experiences that pull you in, I can absolutely relate to that, where it's like, when I look at my life, it's like, I've got a decent place where I live. I've got a pup that's super cute that I enjoy spending time with. I enjoy my career, but then there's still those moments where I get the thought process of like, but I want it to be better. Right.
Exactly. It's just, I don't know. I think when you are a person who does have ambition, I feel like a lot of ambitious people struggle with that, with the need to always strive for more. And while that's a great trait to have, I do feel like it does come with its disadvantages at times too, because like you're never really satisfied. Like, and I mean, not to get off on a tangent, but I do feel like satisfaction isn't necessarily found in the things that we think is found in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's. I was talking with my therapist about this precisely, yesterday actually, and part of the conversation is when that comes up, it's always an internal job, right? There is no outward solution. And I found that a lot in my, even my recovery pursuits. It's like every outside, accomplishment I ever pursued or any outside effect that I sought to change my experience was never the solution. It was only when I was willing to look at my shortcomings. It was only when I was willing to look at my disconnection from my higher power. It was only when I was willing to look at like what decisions that I was making that led me to overthink the situations and then behave in ways that weren't in line with my morals and values.
I mean, that's just it. Like, you get into these zones and these spaces where like you feel that sometimes your ambition overtakes another part of you, I guess. And when you brought up your morals and some of that, like I just think about celebrities, right? And all of the stuff that they're willing to sacrifice to get to a certain level, but then in that level, like us who aren't on a celebrity level, we look at that, oh, that's the perfect life. That's the goal. That's the dream. And it's like, in actuality, you may get it and be completely miserable.
Yeah.
As we've seen so many times.
Yeah.
Because I think satisfaction in that piece is not found in things, and it's not found in a title.
Right.
It's found in you operating within the purpose that God gave you. So, depending on what you believe.
Yeah. It's like, I was just working with someone today. She's a young Harvard-educated lawyer, makes pretty much close to $500,000 a year.
Wow.
You know, with upward movement still, because she's early in her career.
Yeah.
And a lot of the work that we do is really just chilling her out to take a look at how good her life is right now. You know, the things are pretty good, man.
Yeah.
And my heart goes out to her and individuals like that, because, you know, even the conversation you and I are having, because we identify it with that as people, is like, I've got it good, but I want it to be better.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of that is like, we lose sight of even the pieces of the conversation you and I had last week, where it's like, look, man, some people have it real bad.
Yeah.
You know, and staying in touch with that is super important.
Yeah.
It was an impactful, you know, conversation for me last week too, just from the standpoint of like, you know, I don't always stop to think that like, oh yeah, that's right, people have way different experiences than I do.
Yeah.
You know,
it's the truth. Like, that conversation last week kind of was a reminder, and I think that's kind of necessary in the world that we live in today, because we don't really have those interactions a lot.
Yeah.
Even just regular conversation, like we don't have a lot of that on a daily basis, because we're so locked into our devices and the things that we have to do on a day-to-day basis. So we're not taking that time to have those conversations.
Yeah. You know, and I remember I had a conversation years back with one of my best friends from high school who, you know, is African American, and we had that conversation from the standpoint of, I remember I felt the twinge when we were having the conversation of like, oh fuck, I've got to be perfect not to like say some shit I don't mean, or say things that could be misconstrued. And I remember sharing that with him years ago, and he had shared with me, he was like, I felt that same twinge of like, I wanted to perfectly explain my experience.
Right.
But we both realized like neither of those points really mattered. What mattered was the connection.
Yeah.
You know?
And I do think oftentimes, like, when having conversations like that, like, it's less about being perfect and more so about not wanting to offend.
Yeah.
Like, because it's a touchy subject. Like, you're talking about people's lived experiences, like things that are triggering for them, or things that may put them in a negative headspace sometimes, at times, you know, like, it's real life.
Yeah.
And so whenever you talk real life, it comes with a certain feeling. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that twinge is just like kind of like, all right, hold on. Like, it's like kind of checking you a little bit.
Yeah.
So I definitely felt that as well. So
yeah, you know, and what a blessing it is that we can have these conversations and talk about not just you know, differences, but mental health and different topics that people relate to, no matter what our backgrounds are. You know, and to also hold the gravity of like, there are differences and they're still very real, and there is no perfect solution. Because you know, if we tie it into kind of some of the concepts we're touching on early in the conversation today, I think that's a big problem as to why things don't change in society a lot, is that everybody wants it to be a perfect solution, not a real solution.
Right.
You know,
and there isn't a perfect solution. First of all, nothing is perfect. We weren't created to be perfect. Like, we were created with the free will for a reason. Like, we have choice and decision making, and all of our decisions, because we're humans, is not going to be the perfect decision every single time.
Right.
And so I think that there's not a real solution to some of these problems, but I think you can just start to heal what was and rebuild new.
Yeah.
But it starts with acknowledgement, like we were talking about last week. So
yeah, I saw this thing I was reading this week, and it said, you know, therapy is not the process of fixing problems; it's the process of healing past hurts, so that the problems can be changed in real time. Right. You know, and I think that's what happens when you have these kind of open conversations about life.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think, like, I think of the example of like getting cut, right? You may get cut somewhere, like, let's just say it's on your arm. You get a cut on your arm. You may not bleed anymore, but the scar is still there. Yeah. So there's still this. It takes time for those scars to heal. Yeah. In the sense of what we're talking about, I feel that it's not gonna truly heal until we start having conversations like what we had on a grand scale. Yeah. Because it's a lot embedded in the culture or the way we live. So. Yeah. And you know what I like. I would like to hear your opinion on this too. Is like,
when that healing starts to take place, because there are, we're not the only two having, open conversations from differences.
Right.
But I think a lot of times when we see in culture the conversations when it goes sideways and people are at odds with each other, it's because they're not accepting that the scar has changed the way that it looks.
Yeah.
It still is healing, but there's a new image, right? It's not going to be what it was, and it changed, right? It is now a new form that has to be talked about.
Right. Exactly. And it shows up in different capacities in different spaces than it once did. But that doesn't mean that the foundation of where that scar came from is still in effect.
Right.
And so I think that's what people miss sometimes, is like we talk about the conversations that we had, like we talk about it as if it was just the 400 years of slavery.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so much more beyond that that is still in effect. Like the anti-lynching bill, not to get too deep again, but that just passed like 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
So there's things that, like, again, are embedded in the fabric of where we live that, until it's acknowledged and handled and addressed, it's not really going to change.
Yeah.
So,
and for those listening, right, I think this is important to keep you guys up to speed with what Gabe and I are talking about, why it's important in a conversation about perfectionism is, I was just asked a question a moment ago by Sammy, who runs the studio, and she was talking about like mental health when first responders like cops see it on the streets, and she asked a really important question, which, as a clinician I get all the time, is like, what's the solution? And it's exactly what you were just saying right now, is like, these are multifaceted, multi-layered, long-winded problems that don't have a surface solution. And one of the things I shared with her is the conversation like you and I had last week. It's feet on the ground, having meaningful conversations, and people like you guys who are tuning in, listening to them. If even there's only one thing you take from the conversation we have and the rest of it, you're like, whatever, it's like, it's important to start to open the doors to realizing that there is a long lineage and history throughout time of people treating each other pretty rotten. And we live, I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong here too, like, or just from your perspective, we live in such a weird time, like we're on a precipice of like things could either get way worse or they could get better than they've ever been.
Absolutely.
And I don't know which way it's going to go.
Neither do I. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I feel that we're in a space that it's a transitional space. I feel like the next generation that's coming up, the ones behind us, because I guess we're both considered millennials or whatever. I don't know. I don't know the rules no more. But, I think the generation that's coming up behind us feels that, like, I'm not taking none of the stuff that my parents took. I'm not dealing with none of the stuff that America has told me that I'm required to deal with.
Yeah.
I want to travel before my 30s. I want to experience all of these different things. So, with that, I think it comes with like a sense of like I want change, I guess, in a sense. I feel like that's what their movement is. But at the same time, you still have an older generation that exists that still wants that structure, that still wants that same thing that they're used to. And so with that being said, you also have an election year going on where we don't know what's going to happen. And we know that certain ideas and certain groups of people have certain ideologies that could be detrimental. So you never know. It's a lot of pieces to it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and especially without getting it political or anything, it's like we know that even if the elections held the power, things would be different. But it's wherever you made this point last week too, and I think it's really important for the concept of like when we detach in our individual lives from like the bigger picture. Is like, man, power goes where the money's at, and there's not a whole lot that we're going to do feet on the ground to change any of that other than to detach and take the best care of ourselves that we can. And, someone really wise in my life, I was talking to him last week, plays kind of like he's a sponsor. He plays a mentorship role in my life. And And he had shared, a lot of times when you look around in society today, and this is coming from a social scientist perspective as well, it's like you see how much the concept of a higher power is needed.
Yeah.
So many people are wandering around and they don't believe in anything. So no wonder people can't have calm conversations about differences without it getting racially charged or people getting pissed off and treating each other like crap because they don't believe in anything.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, I didn't realize how many people, again, going to different experiences. Like I grew up in church. I grew up around in Christian environments my whole life. Kind of strayed away from it for a little bit and then came back to it because I feel like that foundation kind of prepared me for what I'm able to tolerate now, or what I'm able to deal with and experience now. Because I feel that without some sort of foundation, like you're gonna be wandering. It's like a chicken with his head cut off. Like you're gonna be all over the place. There's no structure. And so granted, I don't press religion on anybody, but it's more so about just having something to believe in, like in this world that just looks so dark. So there's a philosophical truth to it in the sense of like when we go through life, especially as we relate to thinking about our mental health, if you're the dictating power, then you're in a real problem when you found yourself in a situation where your best thinking got you in trouble. And if that's the place, if it was just that, right, for those listening, if it was just that sometimes your best thinking gets you in trouble, wouldn't it be a huge relief if there was something else out there that had some better ideas? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's what people don't realize. Like, it's not so much about what religion you practice, I don't think.
No.
Like, granted, I mean, as a Christian, I do hope that for other people, but I can't force nobody in that direction. I just think that it's a necessity. I can't even talk today. It's a necessity for you to believe in something. Like have something to lean on when you don't have nowhere to go. When you don't see any options. So without like that foundation of belief and morals and values, and you're less likely to take action. We know that empirically in the research, right? It's like in recovery circles, we call it the AAA approach: awareness, acceptance, action. All right. So it's like, imagine you're on the side of the road and your car is crashed. When you get out, it's good to have awareness that there is a problem. It's better to have awareness of what the problem is, right? Exactly.
And then once you have that awareness, you can have some acceptance, right? And so you come to the next juncture, which is like, okay, it's good to have acceptance that there is a problem, but it's going to be a lot better if you have acceptance of what that problem is, right? And then once you have the awareness of the problem, acceptance of the problem, you're much more likely to take action. If only there in our journey of the unseen, right, mental health and our emotions, if only there were philosophical spiritual principles that existed that could point us to the right places of awareness, to the right places of acceptance, so that we could take action. If only that existed somewhere.
Exactly. Exactly.
But it's, I think a big thing too is it's messy, right? It's like, in order to turn your life over in that way, you have to accept that your life is a mess. And I haven't met a ton of people. I've met enough people in my life who are willing to admit that, but I haven't met just hordes of people that are willing to admit that as a human being, my life is a mess. I meet far more people whose lives are a mess who will tell you that their life is perfect. And I think that's a big problem.
And I think like everybody's gonna have a point in their life where they hit rock bottom. Whatever that rock bottom looks like, whatever your circumstances are, I feel, for me anyway, when I hit rock bottom with financial stuff and life stuff and all of the stuff going on at that time, like I felt like God was the only thing that I could go to. And I don't know, everybody's experience is different. But I feel like that's usually what it takes, especially when you gone away from it or you never experienced it. I feel like it takes you having those rock bottom moments to really be like, okay, like, God, I need you. So.
Well, let me ask you this, all right? And I'm not looking for any kind of specific answer on this, but what do you think it is naturally about a conversation regarding perfectionism that brings the concept of a higher power into that mix?
Because I mean, I feel like God is perfection,
right?
And so, in a sense, like I don't know how to explain it, but I do feel that sometimes we strive for that perfectionism because that's like, in our mind, what was perfect to us is not necessarily perfect to God. So I think the spirituality piece comes in when you are operating in a path that's not your own.
Yeah.
And recognizing that even if it may not look perfect to me, it's God's perfection.
Yeah.
That matters. So again, it's all about what you believe.
Yeah. Well, and I like that you add that. Yeah. You know, you're so open when we talk about these things, and you keep it open for the people who are listening. And I think that's massively important, just from the standpoint of, obviously you're in good company. I was raised Christian as well, and hold a lot of those values, and I pick no bones about it, you know. And at the same time, you know, in the realms of helping and assisting people to find their set of morals and values and connect with that, it has to be open, because there's people who've had bad experiences, but that doesn't mean they can't find it. And I think you're absolutely right. We strive for perfection, and I always tell my clients, it's like, none of us are ever going to be saints. And I tell them, I'm certainly not going to be a saint, because I'm never going to stop saying the F word. You know, it's just I try, but it's hard. You know,
it's a struggle. You know, it's a different type of struggle.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Somewhere, like other words, replacements don't always just fit the way that it needs to.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just the right word.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it's a pursuit, and I think it's the right one, you know, and I found that through pain and suffering, you know, in my own ways and versions in life, is like, you know, I didn't want to pursue and strive for any more of the chaos that I was used to.
Yeah.
You know, I had to find something that was more calm and peaceful. And so I gravitated to people who were embodying what that looked like, and I had never had that before. You know, I grew up in a really, you know, I love my family to death, but I grew up in a chaotic environment. My mom grew up in a trailer park. You know, my dad is from, you know, the Galveston, like Texas City area. You know, and my grandfather was a pretty abusive alcoholic. God rest his soul. He got recovery at the end of his life and lived a strong AA program. But the chaos that ensued is what I was used to growing up on both sides of my parents', you know, family. And I got to a point in my adulthood where I was like, you know, I'm striving for like a perfection in my accomplishments, feeling unwanted, unloved, and alone, feeling worthless, feeling like all of that, if I was just perfect, I'd get everybody to love me the way I want them to love me. And you know what? None of those pursuits ever mattered. Yeah. What mattered is, I heard this story. Right. And it's a young man walks into the ether, and there's this big invisible wall. And on the other side of the wall is everything he ever envisioned he wanted for his life: peace, abundance, love, acceptance. Right. And he walks up, and there's a door, and he knocks on the door, and the greeter opens and says, "What's the password?" And the guy said, I don't know. He said, "Well, why don't you go ask your mentor, your sponsor, right? Whoever's giving you guidance." And so he goes back and he asks the guy who's giving him guidance. And he looks at him, he says, "That's it? That's the password?" And he says, "Yeah, go and try it." So he comes back to the door and he knocks, and the greeter says, "What's the password?" And the young man says, "I am nothing. I am no one." And the greeter says, "Come on in, the door's unlocked." And it's when I found people like that, who it didn't matter to them what they were accomplishing. It didn't matter to them what I had accomplished. It didn't matter to them the status. It didn't matter how perfect I was. They accepted me for who I was, and I accepted them for who they were. It was those moments that changed my life.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I that's an amazing example, because I feel like so much of perfection is about perception.
Yeah.
That rhymed a little bit too. I didn't realize that. I didn't do that on purpose. But yeah, like perfection is so much about how we perceive a certain aesthetic, a certain look, a certain feeling. Like it's never something that's really attainable, because when you get to the level that you think perfection is on, it's never there.
Yeah.
We're not designed to find what perfection truly is.
Yeah.
We're just not. Like, I just feel like we were created to discover what our purpose is, not necessarily find perfection. Perfection may be in that purpose.
Yeah.
And I mean, we weren't promised that. We weren't promised perfection at all.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and someone put it to me like this, is like, you also weren't promised that you were going to know when you fulfilled that purpose. So just keep going.
Yeah.
You know, there is no destination.
Yeah.
You know, the journey is part of that purpose. And, you know, the most special thing that you were supposed to do, you might have already done. Doesn't mean you won't do cool things in your life. Doesn't mean you're not going to meet wonderful people and have a chance to do that over and over. But the problem is when we think of the way perfectionism has kind of infiltrated our society with those high standards and high expectations, it's the constant control.
Yeah.
Right. It's like I was talking with someone this morning in my practice about, you know, it's like trying to force the outcomes. All right. I'm going to will myself to this thing. And it's like, you know, and they were, you know, it's the subtle stuff. And maybe you guys listening know people like this. Gabe, maybe you do too. Is like, they're trying to convince you they're happy. And then they get to the end of the story and it's like, were you really happy? Because it sounded kind of miserable.
Exactly.
You know?
It's funny. I was just watching Modern Family.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I noticed in that show is that there was an episode with one of the, I can't even remember the names of these people, but it was an interaction between one of the wives on the show and her friend. Her friend came in town to visit or whatever, and she painted this perfect picture of this perfect life. She got the big office job and has all of these different multiple lovers all over the world. And then the wife is like, oh, I have a family, like, you should come by the house, and the family's acting crazy.
Yeah.
They throwing stuff everywhere. You got liquor bottles all over the place. Like, it's just a mess. And I just found that so interesting because we like to put up these facades as if we're so perfect, this perfect world. Like, and I think everybody is missing something that they think they should have.
Yeah.
When you get to higher levels, I notice so many people that feel empty, for lack of a better word. Like, I think they get to those levels, they've sacrificed all of this stuff, and they look around and there's nobody there to share it with.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that idea of perfection comes from, like, our value system. Like, what do you truly value in this life?
Yeah. And if that answer is money, you know,
it's never going to heal you.
Yeah. You know, and we have studies on that. You know, it's like I always, because the best one that we have is the Harvard happiness study. It's like the longest empirical study we have on happiness, and they've even adjusted it for inflation.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of this study?
I haven't. No.
This is perfect then. Take a stab at, what do you think the level of income, right, is for the cutoff of the point in which any more money than that won't make you happy in America, adjusted for inflation? What's the salary that's the peak of your happiness?
The peak of happiness.
Where if you made $1 more, it's not going to matter how happy you are.
That's interesting. It's hard for me to answer that because I don't necessarily operate with that.
Yeah.
Like, money, I've been raised with the idea that money doesn't equate to happiness.
Yeah.
It may equate to a little bit of peace.
Yeah. Well, there are certain, and I think even this number, it's like over time, you can cultivate a lot of peace, especially in a shared unit.
Right.
But take a stab.
I'll just say, I'll say 200,000 a year. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, you're not that far off. I've heard answers where it's like, oh yeah, $1 million. It's like the yearly salary of the cutoff for happiness is $80,000 adjusted for inflation. So at the point you make $80,000, you know, let's say you're making $40,000 and you get a raise, you're gonna be pretty happy, right?
That's true.
You know, but once you get to the point of $80,000 a year, any raises past that are great. You know, it's like, hey, look, you know, stack your money, get your wealth, do your thing. But past that point, it's not going to impact on any measures your happiness, right? And $80,000, if you're, you know, dedicated to a craft, reasonably educated, put your time in, you're going to get to that point in our society. if you're dedicated, right? And there's always going to be the percentages of society who are, like we talked about last week, who are facing things that they can't get out from under, or who aren't going to put the work in at all, you know? But the vast percentages of like gentlemen like you and I who are out there trying, it's like we're going to get to that point and beyond because we're trying, right?
Absolutely.
And so, most of the listeners, right, who are going to listen to something like this are in that camp. And so it's important to remember, I think, if you guys are listening to this, is that money, it can have a bearing on happiness up to a certain point, but there's also a lot of other indicators that show if you don't reach that mark, that there's like 50 or 60 other indicators that'll make you more happy, even if you're not making $80,000 a year. And a lot of those especially in our society, a lot of those get ignored,
It's true. I think America, the consumerism and the capitalism of America has made us devalue some of the like basic things, like just family, love, all of those little things that we see as little that are really huge. Like, just because of the fact that like we're so get up, I gotta go get it. I gotta go find a way to go get it. Like, and yes, we have needs and necessities, but at the same time, like anything beyond the necessities, like, is excess.
It's a privilege.
It's a privilege. It's a privilege and a blessing. And so you just have to recognize it as such and just understand that this could all be gone in an instant. Like, I've heard so many stories like that. People have it all and then lose it all. And so, again, like, happiness can't be in something that's of this earth. In all honesty, nothing monetary, nothing physical. Some of the major ones on like even the scales for the Harvard study are things like prayer and meditation. Some that make me laugh in those realms of studies on happiness are like, when people joke with each other when you've been inside too long, like, hey, you need to go touch some grass. It's like those are on happiness scales. Get outside and touch grass. Another one is growing your own food. Like, think about how many Americans actually grow their own food. It's like 1%.
I have a friend that from my master's program, she's a homesteader with her husband, and when they post stuff, it's like, they're a little goofy, but they're so happy, and they're just good people. They're out, making their own food and living off the land to the best of their ability. It's, she even acknowledges, right, it's pretty impossible to do that 100% in our society, which is, it's mind-blowing to think, like, on one hand, man, we've come so far. And on the other hand, it's like, man, we're getting really out of touch with things that are probably going to come back, and then nobody's going to know what to do.
Because that's the thing, too. I watch a lot of shows and movies and stuff. I was watching the Leave the World Behind film on Netflix. And it just kind of put in perspective. I was like, all right, so we're not prepared for nothing.
No.
If they shut everything down, these phones, the Wi-Fi kill everybody.
Oh, in a day. Like, dude, people will go ballistic. Did we talk about this when, what was it, like a year or two ago, Instagram went down for like almost 24 hours and people were losing their minds, dude.
I think about it and I'm just so glad. Now, Wi-Fi, I can't even lie. I would be one of them people too, because I work from home. So I can't work. I can't watch no TV no more. I can't. There's nothing that you could do. So Wi-Fi would be something that would be serious, like, because that's going to affect jobs. It's going to affect a lot of different things. But I remember when AT&T had that outage, and I have AT&T, and I was chilling. I was like, oh, this is peaceful. My phone not ringing. I don't know. I'm not one of those people that just relies on my phone constantly, but I know a lot of people that are, and it would be bad.
Well, they God, I wish I could remember the name of the company, but they do simulations on like end of the world scenarios. And, one of them is how long would it take for society to collapse if internet was gone? Like just gone, not coming back. And it's something like just over 24 hours.
I believe
that wars would break out. And within countries, like people would start staking off lands. And, I remember, I think about it in the standpoint of like a couple of years ago, my power went out when I was living in California. And I'm a pretty reasonable dude.
Yeah.
You know, like I try not to get too worked up over things at this point in my life. Now, there were times when I used
For
to,
sure.
you know, but even with all of my like coping strategies, it took me like a good 5 minutes to not be pissed off.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, it's like I could imagine there are people out there who they don't work on their mental health. They're not working on being reasonable with people. And if they lost access to the things that gave them instant gratification, they'd be looking for the next person to cross them to take them out. I bet. I bet. Like, I'll just take your shit.
Absolutely.
You know?
Like, we're in a scary time.
Yeah,
like, it makes me want to like just pull out a map just to make sure I can still do it.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
just like little stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Like, I don't know. It's scary.
Yeah. Well, you and I grew up in a generation too where it's hard to remember times without the internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we probably are also from a time where we can distinctly remember our parents pulling out those maps, the almanacs, remember, where you'd have to like unfold them. And I bet you there's people that will come across a video like this and hear the word almanac and they won't even know what that is.
Nah.
You know, which, you know, we're living in a day and age where like generations don't even know what like a cassette is.
Yeah.
You know, it's
and
wild.
It's crazy. I remember I used to spend my summers at my grandma's house, right? And so they used to have a room with encyclopedias, like the whole encyclopedia collection from A to Z.
Yeah.
And like it was fascinating to me. I used to go in there and just like pick up like one of the books and just look through it. And it's so many people that now that have never seen that.
Yeah.
Like it's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
How far we've come.
That's an interesting one, you know, encyclopedias, because you'd never think like growing up, if someone would have told you that libraries would be like, you know, inconsequential, you'd be like, what? You know, books? Like, yeah, I can just listen to the book. What? Yeah. But that's the world we live in, man. It's like
wild.
you want to publish a book these days. It's like, well, you better also, you know, let out the audio version, because that's how most of the readers are going to read your book.
Yeah.
You know, they don't even read anymore. They listen.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild.
And I mean, it's a gift and a curse. I just feel like even with just cursive, I remember they don't even teach cursive in school.
Yeah.
Like my niece told me that not too long ago.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, we're not learning cursive.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I guess they're not using it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, have you seen like they don't even they don't do basic arithmetic the way we used to do it? You know, like you know how weird. Like when we were kids, did you still have the dot system? Mm-hmm. They use like shapes now. It's like weird, dude.
That's
like
crazy.
One of my clients who's a parent, she was telling me like they use like these shapes and stuff to like count up to like 4 and 5. I'm like, what? Yeah. Like I can't even fathom. But like apparently these kids are learning now like They used to like joke about it in movies like Rain Man, you know, but like that's how they're teaching kids now, is like to envision the numbers. And like we can all do that, I think, with basic arithmetic up to a certain point, and some people can do it way out, but that's how they're teaching kids now. It's crazy.
That's scary. I mean, I don't have kids right now, but that's scary to think about.
Well, yeah. you know what her fear was is that, you know, as that progresses, she's not going to be able to help her kid with anything arithmetic or the way that their kids are being taught in schools. And, you know, I know for certain, like, first of all, I already wasn't a good student when it came to math, you know, even in the old ways.
I failed algebra too, so I had to retake that my senior year. That was a whole thing. But, yeah, math was never my subject.
Yeah. But
I just think about it too, because I remember back when I was in school, like my parents used to say that math was even different when they would try to help me with it. So it's just fascinating how things change. Like the way that they were doing math, they were doing like actual timetables and like having to count on their hand. Like it was just different. Whatever they was doing was different from what we was doing. So it's wild.
Yeah,
really wild.
and you know, I don't know how much that is a bad thing as much as like everything is changing.
Yeah.
Which I think also relates to a conversation about perfectionism. If you're trying to be perfect in a world that's always changing, you're never going to keep up.
Right.
You know, and
the goalpost is always going to move.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, that's why you know, when you had walked in and Sammy and I were talking about like just, you know, getting into stuff like this and just going for it. Just talking, turn on the camera, turn on the microphone and start putting stuff out. Is like that if you're waiting to like do the things you want to do in your life, and I talk a lot with my clients about this, is like, stop making all these arbitrary goals, you know, all the way down to the nitty gritty because you heard someone on YouTube tell you that goal setting is the way to go. It's like, look, goals are good to know the direction you want to go.
Right.
But one of the ways I think I've always tried to think about it, I've heard wise people tell me, is like, you look up and you see a shining light toward the direction you want to go. So you head in that direction, but then as you're in the present on the path, you see like, oh, actually, I kind of like this direction better, right? And so you start heading there, and then all of a sudden you're going here. You can't even see the light initially that you started, but you see a better direction.
Yeah.
You know, and that was never going to be perfect. You know, if you would have asked me when I was 14 years old, you know, I would have had some grandiose, beautiful picture of like being a professional baseball player.
Yeah.
You know, it's a great dream, right? But only 750 people in the world do that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was good enough to play in college, right? But I was better off as a therapist.
Yeah.
You know, a lot less heartbreak.
For sure. I mean, like, to that point, like, if you would have asked me at 14, I would have been the next Deion Sanders. Like,
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I had dreams of playing football or basketball, one of the sports. Like, I was going to be an athlete in some capacity.
Yeah.
But that's not the direction that I was taking.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't realize it when you're in that position. You think that, yeah, this is where I want to go. This is where I'm going to go. And if I don't go this way, I don't have no other options.
Yeah.
But in actuality, like, you have so many other options.
Yeah.
Like, you could do anything that you really want, that you set your mind to. So
Yeah.
It's interesting how we try to control things with goals, because I really think that's what it is.
It is. I think that's a good call out, right? Because we also, you know, if we look at the realm of mental health, we live in a day and age where most of the attention in the realms of well-being goes to like life coaching and things like that, which, you know, I'm not going to say like get rid of life coaching. Yeah. What I am going to say is like, if you really want to work on the depth of your psyche and your well-being, a life coach isn't going to get you there. Right. Some of them may, you know, I mean, I know life coaches in my life who have master's level educations and they just didn't become a clinician, maybe because they had kids and didn't want to go back and do the clinical hours or whatever. I'm not saying that life coaches don't know what they're doing. What I will say is that life coaches who try to pump you full of like the sales tactics and the goal setting and all that kind of stuff, you're better off saving your money, because it's going to get you caught in the loop of, you know, that consumer mindset that the only way that you're going to get ahead is if you sell like them. Yeah. And I was talking with, again, another client earlier this week who, you know, he is a life coach. But what he leans on a lot more and why he has success with it is his experience in taking care of his mental health over 40 years, you know, and people gravitate to him. And I remember when he first came to me, he was trying to like sell these courses and do all this stuff. And I was like, brother, I think people are going to gravitate to you because you take care of yourself, and you should tell that story. And wouldn't you know it, that was a much better route for him. Yeah. You know,
I believe that. And, you know, I realized that some of the greatest entrepreneurs we've ever seen were the biggest risk takers. Yeah. They weren't relying on perfection. They were okay with failing. Yeah. And I think a lot of us have $1 million dreams with middle-class mentality. And it doesn't work like that. Like, it's, you can achieve, and I'm using money as an example because it's obviously we already talked about what money is not the end-all be-all, but I'm using it as an example to say that, like, you have to be willing to take risk in life and do something different in order for you to reach some of those heights that we aspire to reach. Yeah. And even when you get there, it's may or may not look how you thought it was going to look. You know? So, I don't know.
I completely agree with that. And, you know, one of the ways I relate to it is like there was a real shift in my life where in my early 20s, you know, and I'm sure people who know me who are listening to this remember like when the young me, I wanted, after baseball, it was, I want to be a public speaker and I want to make millions of dollars and I want to leave some kind of impact. And it was all that all the time. And, you know, I've had realms of success in those things. It's why I do this. I enjoy speaking. And, you know, one of the places I came to is, number one, I enjoy hearing myself talk way too much. I need to come off that. Right. That was a journey to like break down my ego, you know, because in my early years, a lot of my speaking was because I felt like I had the answers. And a big transition for me was, I'm no longer trying to speak to people because I know I have some kind of answer. I'm speaking to people just about my experience, and that's what good people have done for me. And I seem to have some kind of gift in sharing information that people relate to. And so instead of trying to get some kind of clout, I'm going to do it to just share experience, and whoever listens, whoever doesn't. But the interesting thing is, what I realized is, I wasn't trying to make money anymore. I wasn't trying to get clout anymore. What mattered at a certain point were the opportunities to be of service to somebody, and the willingness and the lengths that I was willing to go to, because I knew it was going to help me too. That started to define success for me in my life. And wouldn't you know it, man, it's like once I started to do that without a desire for some kind of payoff in society, but just truly being of service to someone who needed support in the moment, that's when anything I ever wanted in my life started to piece together.
Yeah, I believe that. I definitely believe that. I think that's what it takes, though.
Yeah,
it has to be something bigger than you.
Yeah,
in order for it to be something that you get up and do every single day.
Yeah.
It has to fulfill you in a sense. And, going back to the perfection piece of it, I feel like a lot of our idea of fulfillment comes from a perfect lifestyle or aesthetic that we see on a daily basis. And honestly, I mean, there's more value in what you're doing. Like, because it aligns with you and your path and your purpose. So that's the biggest thing, is finding what aligns with your purpose. Yeah.
You'll be much happier that way.
Absolutely. You don't have to force it when it just clicks.
Yeah. And beyond happiness, and this is something to kind of tie in towards the end of this conversation, is you find peace in those realms. And that's not just me speaking from my experience. That's other good people who've shown me that directly, that peace was actually what we were looking for. And
happiness is overrated.
More money, more problems. They
made the song for a reason.
That's right.
See who made that song.
That's right. God bless Seal, man.
Right.
I'd rather have peace any day.
Absolutely.
And that way, when financial stability comes, wealth or whatever, whatever blessings come to those who are listening, to Gabe and I, it's like, with peace, we stand a better chance of knowing what to do with it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's a worthwhile pursuit, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah. So I think we're going to wrap up there, guys. We appreciate you checking in. Do you have any last words you want to share, Gabe?
Yeah, just don't chase perfection, chase purpose.
Yeah, chase purpose.
That's it.
Yeah, I like it. That's a beautiful place to end.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you in next week's episode, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, Breaking the Cycle. Love you guys.
Bye.